So as far as what makes it a qualified lead, it's a very subjective, qualification standard. Essentially, what would be a qualified lead for me might be completely different for somebody else. But just, to give you some sort of like a loose framework, one thing you want to look at is the price of the property. I think that's pretty universal, unless you're doing some sort of a short sale. And I think there's going to be some opportunities to do that in near term. But if you're doing some short sale, that's where like it might be a little bit of flexibility on that. But for the most people that are doing wholesaling or investing, like the first thing would be the price of the property. So let's say if you have a property that's worth, based on the comps that you feel comfortable with, you comp it at $200,000. However, the seller would not want to take anything less than $90,000. In that case, for most of the people, this is not going to be a deal. So for us, then this would be an unqualified lead. We will leave it as unqualified. So for us, pricing is the number one criteria that we look at. What's the price that the seller is wanting for that property, and what do we think the ARV of this property is. Again, unless if you're doing short sale or something like that, then that you can get into those different kind of marketing or exit with, but not many people are doing that. But for traditional investor or wholesaler, like the price is one thing, and then the next thing is the motivation, right? So somebody says on a $200,000 house, if somebody is wanting, they're okay taking $150,000 and the price makes sense. However, they're not super motivated to sell their property right now, and it's going to take them, let's say, if they want to sell in next year or so. So they're not really a qualified lead. It's a good lead. It meets one criteria that they price. Or if they do not give you a price, they just call in and say, hey, I'm not sure of the price. I'm open to offers, but I'm not looking to sell for at least a year. We've run into a number of those in last few months. This year especially, we've run into that issue of people, they want to sell their property. However, the issue is, and their price would also work, but the issue that we've run into is they have a property to sell. The pricing would also work for us, but they don't have anywhere to go after selling their property. So they're not super motivated. They want to sell maybe in a year or so. So we don't really, for us, we would put them on a drip campaign, follow up with them. But it's not really a qualified lead. The qualified lead for us would essentially be a hot lead, price makes sense, and they are ready to sell right now. And the third thing is the condition of the property. Right. So now this could be very different for different people. For us, let's say for the condition of the property, if it needs major structural work done, let's say if it's for us to get the most value out of this property, we actually need to put another floor on top. We need to just do major structural foundational work, lift the whole house and do major structure. For us, we would not be interested. So for us personally, it would be not a qualified lead. But again, for other people on the call, they might be totally okay with this. They might have buyers that are going to be okay buying properties regardless of the condition of the house. So something that's not qualified for me based on the condition of the property would be a totally fine deal, based on somebody else. And then, the other condition is basically, the time frame could also be impacted by, let's say if they're going through a divorce and it's going to take, again, another 8 months or a year for the whole divorce situation to unfold. Then again, this is not going to be a qualified lead for us because we don't know kind of how that's going to unfold. There's like a lot of moving factor variables, in that situation. Another thing that we've noticed in our market lately is people that are calling us, but they don't actually have authority to sell the house. Like they're not the actual decision maker on the property. So they might have willingness to sell the property. The numbers make sense, but they don't actually have the authority or, they're not the final decision maker on that property. So that's kind of what we are doing in our business and qualification. We do is like in our lead intake questions, we want to, like, again, another thing for us is like, is the house listed with the real estate agent? If it's listed with the real estate agent, just right off the top, it's not a qualified lead. Like we do not buy anything that listed with a real estate agent. So if that question is yes, and it's not qualified lead, then we just leave it at not qualified, move it to a dead lead. And the other one would be, why are they looking to sell a house? Again, this goes into the motivation pain point. If they're behind on taxes and mortgage, for example, if somebody that's behind on one mortgage payment or one, in our market, the taxes are billed twice a year. So if they're only behind one tax payment and one mortgage payment, they're not going to have real motivation. They might have received a postcard from us or letter, or they might have, Googled us, and came across our website. But somebody that's going through, that's going to be behind on mortgage and taxes, just one payment, it's not going to be super motivated. But somebody who's, hasn't paid a mortgage payment for 6 months is going to be a lot more motivated. So the other issues like, job loss, it's going to be a little bit more motivation for the homeowner versus somebody that's not has a stable job. And again, they're kind of looking to sell their property to see what they can get for the house. And then another thing, if they've done any repairs in the house in the last 2 years. So we asked this question, if they've done some major rehabs in last, year, 2 years, and they're going to have much higher value of the house, or in their opinion, the house is going to be worth way more than it actually might be, because they feel like they've done some work in the house in last year or 2 years. So they're going to value the work they put in their property a lot more than what the market is willing to support. So that's something to look into. Again, like how soon are they looking to sell? Somebody that's looking to sell, as soon as possible in next, month or so, it's going to be way more motivated than, somebody says, when I get the right offer. They're just, that basically means they're just, tire kicking, just shopping for offers and see which is going to be highest offer that they can get. And then if they have a price in mind, somebody that has a price in mind, a realistic price that we can see based on the market value of the property, gives us an idea of kind of their motivation and how qualified the lead is. Is the house vacant or occupied? Sorry, this should be changed. It's a default question. So vacant, occupied. So house that's vacant, the homeowner is going to have more motivation to sell versus a house that's occupied, especially if it's tenant occupied and the tenant is paying on the rent on time. They're not going to have as much motivation. Mortgage on the house is another criteria that we look at, not necessarily for motivation, to see if it makes sense. Again, the homeowner might have $200,000 property, they want $100,000. So it checks off that, okay, they want to sell as soon as possible. They're going through a divorce, they're going through a job loss. However, if the mortgage on the house is, let's say, $190,000, that's a not qualified lead for us, because the mortgage balance is way more than what we would be willing to pay. And we don't do any short sale, at least not right now in our business. So that would, disqualify the lead, and we would move it to a dead lead at this point. We wouldn't even really chase up with them because they owe $190,000 on a $200,000 house. Again, have you received any past due notice from the lender? Somebody that has actually received a past due notice from the lender, it's going to be way more motivated to sell their house versus somebody, like I said, that's only 1 month behind on their mortgage payment, and it's just testing the market to see if they're going to get an offer for a $200,000 house on a $200,000 house, just because 1 month behind on a mortgage payment, and they want to see if they can get that, the market value for the property. And then this is a very important question to ask, so you kind of have the right expectation of how quickly the property is going to move. If are you talking actually to the decision maker on the sale of the house, or are there other family members involved in, who all need to agree? So we had one house that we were looking to buy, and there were 5 siblings involved. And I think we agreed on the sale price with 3 or 4 of the 5 siblings, but we could not get the 5th sibling to agree. He just did not want to sell. And then at that point, there's nothing we could do. Another house we had actually under contract, and we even, a week before we were supposed to close on the property, we found out the person that actually signed the purchase agreement did not even have authority to sell the property. He had gone through divorce, but he actually did not own the house. His wife did. So that was kind of a wasted, lead. And, throughout the whole discussion, qualification that we had, he never mentioned that. But, if he had mentioned that, then we would not have taken it to the title. But, we had a signed purchase agreement. and we were like, a few days before closing, it turned out that he actually did not have the authority to sell the property. So it's kind of what we look at when we are qualifying a lead, just to kind of make sure, if it makes sense for us to move forward on this opportunity or not, or if it's going to be like a wasted opportunity. We would rather be better off spending our time and effort on something that's going to be a little bit more qualified lead.